let's get right into the urgency part of this. I'm listening to youth. My guess is you're listening to youth and hearing a lot of the same themes that are coming out. We're hearing things about stress, anxiety, loneliness, depression, even losses. A girl tells me, I'm very good at making people think that everything is okay with me now. You're listening to stories. I'm listening to some of the stories. Someone tells me the other day, she says, I'm lonely. I have a couple of close friends, but I have a lot of school friends and I just don't see them right now. I don't get to interact with them. I'm really feeling some depression, she tells me. I know two youth, this person says, that just moved to our small town, and they're trying to make friends, and there's no way to do that. So I chat with them as much as I can and try to introduce them to others, but it's tough for them. My parents, they're both working at home. They seem to fight a lot, and I guess they're going to get a divorce now. This girl is just stuck in the middle of the conflict within her house, and it keeps going and going and escalating all the time. Another person tells me, she says, I have 3 friends and I spend a lot of time just trying to keep them alive because they keep talking about wanting to end their life. She says, I go to adults, I even call hotlines, but nobody seems to really be able to help. But she's still at it and she's trying. A mom tells us that she had to call the emergency line for help for her son after some suicidal attempts. After her son left and went for help, one of the police officers said, you know what's hard about this? And he said, this is the 5th call tonight we've had for teenagers who are depressed and to the point where they need medical help. The needs are great. The urgency is there. It's been pointed out to me that we are all living in a time of trauma, right? In the midst of pandemic, in the midst of the reality of inequalities, in the midst of the violence we see, the riots we see, the political conflicts that are going on, along with our own personal losses and frustrations. One of the things we know about trauma is that we seldom recognize it when we're in the midst of it. It can be months, even years later, that the residual effects might show up. So again, stress, anxiety, depression, all those things start playing out in people's lives. At-risk behaviors, right? Drinking and alcoholism and drug use and relational struggles with people that we love and care about. We're talking about teens. But pause for a moment because this is very, very true and has a huge effect on caregivers, people like us. So yes, we need a lot of mental health people and encouragement to go to them, but we also need those people who just care, who notice, who listen, who walk beside us in the midst of all of this. I believe that youth are some of the very best at knowing how to listen, how to care, how to help their friends. How cool when they know that their love is really a reflection of Christ's love. I tell youth all the time, you do far more ministry than I do, or your pastor, or any youth minister does. And what I mean by that is simply, you know far more youth, and you know their great joys, and you know their great stresses. Youth are really the front lines of ministry because they are where youth already are. So one night I'm visiting a group, and they had a group of peer ministry trained youth, and I'm sitting with them. I'm asking them, how are you using those skills? How are these practical for you? And of course, it was a new group, so they all kind of stared at me. And so I kept pushing a little bit and prodding. And finally, one girl, she says, I don't think this probably counts, But she said, Friday night I went out with a friend. Her parents are split up. I think they're going to get a divorce. I thought it would be good just to go and be with her and hang out for a while. I raised my hands and was like, oh my gosh, that's it. One by one, all the students had various stories. One kid talked about a math class, and there was a student who hardly ever talked to anybody, and nobody talked to him. But he says, I do, and tried to involve him in conversations with others. I walked away from that night going, oh my gosh, the reality is people are doing ministry all the time. We just forget to tell them that that's what it is. I think that's one of the great gifts that we can give people is the realization that ministry is lived every day, everywhere, every relationship. Now that we get a little bit about the urgency and, of course, what I think is really important, I should introduce myself. I'm Lyle Greiner. I'm the National Director of Peer Ministry Leadership. I love, love, love what I get to do. I've literally trained thousands of youth leaders, of pastors, of campus ministry people through the years. And it has been so rewarding to know that they can turn around and teach others often using those skills. I want to move ahead and give you a little bit about where does peer ministry come from and why it is important and why I think it can make a huge difference in your ministry. That's me. And beside me is Dr. Barbara Varenhorst. She now is in a nursing home. She's in her 90s and she's unable to speak a whole lot, but her story, it goes like this. She was a school counselor in Palo Alto, California, and as she tells it, she said, I often ask students who they go to when there's something going on in their life or they notice a concern in someone else's life. The reality, she said, they never ever said, well, you, Barbara. She said they almost always talked about a friend, about a person that would notice or that they would confide in first. So her premise was, why not am I giving skills to my students? So she started what she at that time called peer counseling. It became a statewide initiative in California and then took off across the country as peer helpers, natural helpers, peer mediation, all kinds of things. Churches started coming to Barbara, so she rewrote, called it peer ministry, and traveled and worked with denominations, with various churches, with campus ministries, helping them to start what we call peer ministry. My world, a youth minister in the Minneapolis area, people would bring Barbara to town, and I went. And I learned from her over and over again. I loved where it was taking the students that I was working with. So what do I think we need to be about? I think we first equip kids. We give them those relational skills that helps them help their friends. We give them the ability to listen. We give them the ability to care, to welcome, and things that, second word, empowers them. And then we continue that by encouraging and supporting and mentoring them in the midst of that. Third word, we allow them. We give them the permission to use those skills. And some of that means that we have to step aside and that we will no longer be the center of everything or everybody's life, but to allow them to lead in their midst of our programs, but also in the midst of everyday life. So let me get a little bold on this. You're going to have to think about this for a minute. If we are not equipping, empowering, and allowing our youth or other people, as far as that goes in the church, to do ministry, I think we are missing the whole point of youth ministry, of ministry. I think being in a youth ministry means giving youth meaning and purpose for now. I believe peer ministry works so well because it helps them understand ministry as something they are already deeply concerned about. Their relationships and friendships. That yes, That is ministry, being in relationship. By now, I think you get my bias towards skills, right? I was having lunch with Brian McLaren. Yeah, I'm name dropping now for a minute. But he talked about the importance of skills. He said, it's interesting. He said, the church, we're all about the word love. And we're all about loving our neighbors, ourselves, and loving God. But he says, it's almost like going to a yoga class, and we get there, and instead of doing yoga, instead of doing exercises and having mats, we sit in straight rows, and we listen to somebody talk about all the benefits and inspire us all about yoga. We sing songs maybe about the upward cobra and the downward dog, and you get the point, right? He said that is so often what churches are like. He said, we talk about love, we preach about love, we give lessons about love, we sing about it, but we never give people the actual skills needed to care, to listen, to welcome to their neighbors all the time. Youth are either leading or they are leaving. I'm not sure that I said it first, but I certainly get the award for saying it the most. Here's the deal. I think every kid in every church, whether they're active or not, needs to hear these words. We need you. And they need to hear that at least twice a year. And it needs to be something meaningful and specific and personal. People show up where they are needed. I think this whole idea of urgency, of pandemic time, of crisis time, of lost time, requires kids to still have a need. And I think some of that is a relational, caring for everybody around them need. I think we can organize for that. All right. That's enough for right now. I hope you catch some of my excitement and some of my passion in the midst of this. I hope that there were some things, some little takeaways for you to think about further and dwell on and fight back on if you want. Stick around. We'll have a little conversation with each other. I would love to give you some things that I think you can turn around and use with your youth right now. If I were to give an immediate application to this, I would say get your kids talking very personally, one-on-one. Figure out some almost mentoring conversation type of experiences that they can have with youth their own age or youth that are younger than them, and that they can talk openly with someone their own age about some fun things and just get to know you things, but also some deeper things that are important for them in life. Right? So www.peerministry.org, explore it. Let's keep the talking going. If you have questions beyond this, at the bottom of any page on that site, you can fill out the form and send it to me. Blessings. We'll see you hopefully in the discussion. Yay.